Let's go, ladies and gentlemen. We actually have the rookie numbers in here, so we're going to have a much better idea of where these guys are going in drafts now. So I'm not going to waste your time. Let's go ahead. Let's get in the big board draft. Y'all know $10 buy-in, $2 million prize pool. I believe like $200,000 for first, $100,000 for second, $65,000 for third, $50,000 for fourth, all the way down the line. I don't care about third place. I don't care about fourth place. I don't care. I'm going for first. Okay, we're going to win this $200,000 no matter what. There's 7 spots open in this draft room. If anybody wants to go ahead and hop in this draft with us, now is your shot, ladies and gentlemen. But thank you so much. We got all the usual suspects coming to hang out with us. Figured that'd be the case considering this is a fantasy football draft on March 3rd. I know I saw a couple people earlier in the chat saying that they are way too deep into drafts. I have been going slow here. I've decided that we are going to pace ourselves. I have only drafted teams on the live stream, so this is maybe my 4th or 5th underdog draft this offseason. This is my first one after the NFL Combine. So, of course, I am excited to go ahead and get this going. But we're at pick 1. I've said this before. I'll say it again. Oh my gosh, I can't believe, is CeeDee Lamb really wide receiver 1 in redraft right now? I honestly am very surprised to see that. When it's all said and done, once we get clarity with these wide receivers, I am most likely going to be going ahead and taking Justin Jefferson as my 101 if Kirk Cousins comes back to Minnesota and Cousins is 100% good to go. Now, I really want that to be the case. I mean, if you are drafting Justin Jefferson, obviously kind of need that to be the case. I'm probably just going to pull the trigger on Christian McCaffrey for now, especially if everybody else is drafting him at pick 1, might as well. I mean, obviously, I should have drafted him at 1 last year. I was an idiot not to. And I know that we can say, okay, well, we should have done it last year. Let's not make the mistake. We got to draft him at 1 this year. But at the same time, he's another year older this year, right? So, I mean, this is a running back that was drafted back in 2017. I understand he's still great. He has not shown any signs of slowing down. But same draft class as Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara. I mean, these other guys that you have seen this massive fall off from. Same draft class as Leonard Fournette. So, I mean, it's not like CMC is a spring chicken here. So, I do have my hesitations on taking him number 1 overall, but we will go ahead and we will get this going anyway. And Chief Smoke out here right next to us in this draft. Let me know if you're in this draft with us. Happy to see you, my man. Sean says he's done 105 big board drafts. Seek help, my friend. We got Sean out here, I believe at pick 11. So if Sean's 105 drafts in, I will say that you probably should be watching what Team 11's doing way closer than whatever you're watching me do at 1. Right here, I'm clicking buttons at 1. But let's go ahead. Let's go ahead. And we got Bryce out here, first time drafting with us at 10. Happy to see a big route. Always happy to see you, my friend, in here at 9. And of course, I'll be happy to answer dynasty questions, of course. But let me go ahead and move this over. We got Drake in here at pick 7. Kyron Williams, Devon Achane, both off the board, 13 and 14. Let me see what other players have. I am for sure taking Jonathan Taylor over Kyron Williams, Devon Achane. Keep in mind, Kyron Williams, Devon Achane obviously had much better 2023 seasons. But at the end of the day, if it was as simple as, okay, let's just draft the players who scored the most points in 2023, then fantasy football wouldn't be a game at all. I mean, we would obviously know exactly what to do, and we wouldn't have to be sitting here looking at a range of outcomes. I love JT. I mean, I lost a lot of money drafting him last year. I lost a decent amount of money drafting him the year prior. We won a lot of money drafting him the year before that, but still, nonetheless, it's a running back that's had the profile every step of the way. It's been frustrating with injuries, but I mean, we can say Kyron Williams got injured last year. Devon Achane got injured last year, obviously to different extents, but can't necessarily just knock Jonathan Taylor given his injury. It will be interesting to see what happens with Anthony Richardson if Anthony Richardson steals rushing touchdowns at the goal line. And also, you may see Anthony Richardson have a lower check down rate overall. And that could be a bad thing for JT. But at the same time, what we have seen a lot from these quarterbacks that are phenomenal rushers is it actually boosts the efficiency of the running backs in their offense as well. I mean, look at what you see in Baltimore every year with Lamar Jackson and the running backs like Gus Edwards that run behind him. I don't think Gus Edwards is some great talent, but he does pretty damn well when Lamar is taking attention from the opposing linebackers. So Deebo Samuel goes off the board at 22. You have Josh Allen falling. Allen goes 23. I mean, I would have strongly considered him here. I'm going to go ahead, take Saquon Barkley as well as Chris Olave. I mean, with Barkley, it's not a guarantee that he's back with the Giants, right? I mean, you may end up seeing Saquon go to a team like the Houston Texans. Another running back that, I mean, similar to JT, obviously a top-end prospect. His prospect profile doesn't matter at all at this point. But I think that, honestly, if he finds himself in a better situation outside of the Giants, this can be a running back that we remember is a top 3 talent in the NFL at the position, and he is younger than what you have with some of these other guys, such as CMC. But after Olave, yeah, Michael Pittman Jr. going off the board. If y'all remember, Michael Pittman Jr. was one of, I think he was our second most drafted wide receiver last season behind Josh Downs, his teammate. Yeah, Josh Downs is one of the guys I was taking around 18, and we were hiding that from y'all last year. I thought we were going to crush it. Sadly, I mean, he did all right, but obviously he wasn't Puka. He was not Kyron Williams, so he did not matter. But real quick side note, I mean, if somehow, some way, anybody watching this doesn't know what we are doing, we are drafting on Underdog Fantasy. This is best ball, so there's no time commitment at all during the year. It's how people are crazy enough where they've been able to get in hundreds of drafts already this offseason. Of course, we'll be drafting here all offseason. I get in hundreds of drafts every offseason. Not this early, though. Not as early as March 3rd. But if you want to opt in one, I mean, now's a great time to do so. I would say you don't need to go 150 deep if you want to get in a few and make sure that you are ready for the time of May, June, July, when we're really hitting the ground running through the summer. You can find that link in the description in the comment section. Code FLOCK will get you a 100% deposit match, plus our Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings. And this is a $10 buy and $200,000 first place prize. Over the past 2 years, I've won $150,000 on Underdog. Sounded a lot better when last year we could say, oh yeah, last year I won $150,000. Now we're going to have to say over the past 2 years, I won $150,000. We'll say that. But let's go ahead and catch up on all these questions. Brian says, how are we feeling about Xavier Worthy breaking the record? So it's actually crazy. If y'all remember, y'all go back to what we were looking at with these drafts about a month ago. We were drafting a lot of Xavier Worthy. At least he was one of our targets in the later rounds. One, because of Lawrence, and two, just we were looking at the range of wide receivers and we were saying, well, you know what? Brian Thomas Jr., Keon Coleman, like that tier, I'm not necessarily willing to buy in immediately. And instead, I'd rather just go for the cheaper wide receivers in rounds 14, 15, 16, 17, those guys, and hopefully we get hit on a riser or two. Xavier Worthy clearly looks to be a riser, especially in best ball. Is going to be more impactful than you would assume in a regular redraft league. So, I mean, I like this previous price point. It's all going to come down to where he's going. Good news and bad news with Xavier Worthy. Bad news is he may be penciled in as a field stretcher at the next level. I mean, it's not like you have 1-for-1 correlation where a wide receiver runs a fast 40-yard dash, and then all of a sudden they're some great option in fantasy. You want to hit a minimum threshold, but it's not like, oh, you ran a 4.21 instead of a 4.26. This completely changes everything. Honestly, it doesn't really change much outside the fact that he's probably penciled in to be an NFL round 1 draft pick now. And if that's going to be the case, then I think you should be giving him a premium. Now, Cooper Kupp off the board at pick 45. Ooh, I don't want to show our hand here too much, but I'm actually pretty excited about what we're looking at. See what Kari does. As Lamb, Debo, Rashee Rice goes, Zay Flowers at 46. I do think that's a great Zay Flowers pick. James Cook off the board. So I think I'm going to go ahead and take Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Addison. 2 years ago and won $150,000 on Underdog. My most drafted quarterback was Patrick Mahomes. We were getting with the 4-5 turn. I'm going to continue to draft Patrick Mahomes every chance I get at the 4-5 turn. I think the elite level quarterbacks here in the middle rounds are great price points right now. There's really no excuse not to grab these guys. So we'll take Mahomes. We'll take Addison. Rome absolutely crushed at the combine. If you wanted to go ahead, if you wanted to take Rome here at 49 over Addison, you can. I just think Addison was also a phenomenal prospect. Addison had a great rookie season as well. I mean, I think that Addison could be a strong riser. I mean, y'all remember, I think we were drafting him in round 7 a few weeks back, and we'll continue to go ahead and move him up and up and up. I think you can make an argument for Addison up there alongside like T. Higgins, to be completely honest. Okay. So let's move this over. Brian says, big W for them Horns. Yeah, yes. It was a good day for our Texas Longhorns. And let me go back to what we were talking about when I was saying like, oh yeah, I didn't want to be drafting Keon Coleman. I don't want to be drafting Brian Thomas Jr. where they were going. Turns out Brian Thomas Jr., I mean, had a great combine and probably will be a little bit more expensive now than he was. But it was more so about the thought process, and I didn't know what Xavier Worthy was going to do. It was more so about the thought process of looking at that tier wide receiver, saying there's a lot of uncertainty. You're probably going to have these guys moving around a bunch over the next month, especially when things happen, such as the NFL Combine. So might as well take the guys that are at the end of the tier and see if we can get some hot risers out of that group, rather than having to pay up for the guys at the very top, such as Brian Thomas Jr., as well as Keon Coleman. Turns out Keon Coleman's a faller. Xavier Worthy's a riser. But Brian Thomas Jr. looks like he's going to be crushing in his own right. So, I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. may be rising based off what happened yesterday in these drafts as well. Okay. Now, Beluga says, thoughts on the early Nico Collins versus Tank Dell draft positions. So, back when these drafts first launched, I was saying that Nico Collins was way overpriced in comparison to Tank Dell. That's when Tank Dell was going, I mean, I want to say about 15 picks after where his ADP is now. Now that they are within a round of each other, I think it's a lot more reasonable to be looking at that gap between Nico Collins, Tank Dell. I'm probably not taking Nico Collins there anyway. So, I mean, if I had to make a bet on one of the receivers, I'd go Dell. My thing with these Houston guys, I mean, if you're looking at these prices, I don't see how they get more expensive of being round 2 and round 3 picks. And Houston is a team with a lot of money. It's a team that could, I mean, some people are mocking to go wide receiver round 1. I'm not saying that they have to, but I could see like a Brian Thomas selection, and then all of a sudden you having a pretty strong hit to both Nico Collins and Tank Dell with their overall price points. So I'm not drafting either right now, but I completely understand if you wanted to go ahead and pull the trigger on one of them. Okay. So Chris Godwin off the board, pick 66. Tajee Spears goes 67. Thomas says Tank Dell, way better value. I mean, I agree Tank Dell was a much, much better value, especially a month ago. Now I think it's a little bit tougher when Tank Dell's risen so much over the past few weeks. Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe Tank Dell wasn't going that late a few weeks back, but I just remember like there being a massive gap between the two players, which I didn't understand 2 weeks ago, but I could be making that up. Calvin really goes. David Montgomery off the board as well. So I don't want to say too much. Chief Smoke is in this live stream. So let's wait. See what he does. He goes Pickens. I think I'm going to go ahead, take Brian Thomas Jr. Like I said previously, it was not drafting a ton of them. But I mean, I think that you get the clarity now where he's locked and loaded. He's going to be a round 1 NFL draft pick. I just want to see what quarterback will we have on the way back around at 96, 97. 96, 97, we're going to be looking at Purdy, Tua, Lawrence, Caleb. And for that reason, we're going to go ahead. We will take Joe Burrow here. I mean, it's a 20-round draft, so typically I want to be building around 3 quarterbacks. But going back to what we were talking about previously, I mean, the price point that you have on these elite-level quarterbacks in the middle rounds right now, so much cheaper than we've seen in years past. And this is a very interesting thing to point out. So 2 years ago, when we won the $150,000 on Underdog, a big reason why we had so much success over a large sample is we are taking the elite level quarterbacks. 2 years ago, it was clear cut. You wanted to take the elite level quarterbacks. You don't want to think twice about it. If y'all remember last year when drafts opened up, specifically the big board, Mahomes, Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar, all the elite level quarterbacks were going at the beginning of round 2. Burrow was a round 3 draft pick when things opened up last season. And it was very difficult to draft elite level quarterbacks there, and we stopped doing it. When the big board dropped last year, we said, yes, we just want a lot of money taking the elite level quarterbacks, but I'm out. Y'all made the price a little bit too ridiculous. Now you're seeing Mahomes yet again go at the 4 or 5 turn. You're seeing Burrow going around 7. Justin Herbert's going to go in round 8. So I am right back to where we were 2 years ago. And I'm right back to saying that we have to go through and take these elite level quarterbacks. I mean, I think that they're great values. I think we've come away with elite level quarterbacks in every single draft that we've done this offseason, which keep in mind is only 4 or 5. Whatever we've done on the live streams, what we've done, period. But I mean, it's just beginning to make me think that ADP matters less and less and less when you were seeing just over the 3-year sample that I've been doing underdog drafts now. Wild fluctuations with just quarterback prices, something that's very simple, right? It's like just 1 year the market determines, okay, you want an elite level quarterback, got to take him in round 2. If you want a mid QB1, you got to take him in round 3. Whereas in the next year, they're going around 7. Okay. Drop John Montana says, thoughts on team stacks, managed to get the entire Niners team from the 101. 100% you're going to be targeting stacks, right? So that's a little bit of a painful thing when we take both Mahomes as well as Joe Burrow here. And we don't have the Rashee Rice stack with Patrick Mahomes. We don't have the Jamar Chase stack with Joe Burrow. You want to go through, you want to stack teammates. We've done the in-depth dives with videos, with write-ups of advance rates, specifically when you get to the playoff tournaments, and you want to have wide receivers stacked from the same team. You want to have you want to have quarterback and their pass catcher stacked from the same team. So, I mean, definitely it should be something that you are targeting. But also there are rare instances where you could, and keep in mind, I'm saying this trying to jump through mental gymnastics hoops. We talk about that all the time. I'm trying to come up with some explanation of, oh, we didn't get our stack, so maybe it works out. I mean, you could see a world where all of a sudden, I mean, you have, say, a Rashee Rice injury. Rashee Rice goes down. He misses 8 weeks of the regular season. In terms of once we get to the playoff stretch, Rashee Rice is really non-existent. He's extremely low owned. And maybe a naked Patrick Mahomes is how you advance those teams in the playoffs. Or you can say the same thing with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, which I want to reiterate. Plan A is to go through, and plan A is to get your stacks, get your correlation. Obviously, that's what we want to chase. But just because we don't have Chase, it's not going to stop me from drafting Joe Burrow, because you have to think about what the rest of the field is doing as well. If 100% of the other drafters only take Burrow and they take Jamar Chase, then going through and taking Burrow without Jamar Chase is all of a sudden an extremely plus EV play. Now, of course, it's not the case that 100% of Burrow teams are stacked with Chase. So I still want to chase those stacks, but coming away without them is not a complete killer of the draft. And says, hey, hope you enjoyed the Lions proving you wrong. Did you end up winning anything on Underdog? Barely cracked even this past year, my friend. But we can still say over the past 2 years, we won $150,000. And yes, a great game. I mean, great season from the Lions. I thought that the Lions were not going to be a playoff team, as they have been a very bad franchise for the longest time. And what I'm always willing to go through and do is say, these teams that are dysfunctional from the top down, like the New York Jets, like the Detroit Lions, a lot of times it's a safe bet to assume that they are going to find a way to mess it up. And that's something that's completely different than if you would have asked me way back when, say, I really got into fantasy football in the NFL. Like I started playing in like 15 plus dynasty leagues back in 2014 every year. And if you would have asked me back in 2014, 2015, so about a decade ago, of what I thought of the importance of NFL ownership, if it mattered at all from a fantasy football perspective, if it mattered at all from a real life perspective, I would say, maybe a tiny bit. But ultimately what matters most is the players and maybe the coaching staff. And I come around on that a lot. I do think that, just from a real life expectation standpoint, even removing ourselves from fantasy football, there is something to the teams that have been very bad for the past 20 years. There's something to the Browns. There's something to the Lions. There's something to the Jets. You're seeing the Carolina Panthers ownership mess up Bryce Young now, or make a bad call and taking Bryce Young in the first place. Where I do think that a team can be dysfunctional from the very top down, and it is something that you have to keep in mind. But let's go. Nick says, how are we feeling about the Falcons' skill positional players with the coaching change and the potential quarterbacks? It can't be a downgrade. I said something in a Dynasty video that people got really upset with. If Justin Fields goes to the Atlanta Falcons, obviously I go through and I take Kyle Pitts here. Justin Fields going to the Falcons could very easily be a good thing for the Atlanta Falcons. It could very easily be a very fun thing and a good thing for Justin Fields as well. But at the same time, it's probably bad for Drake London. It's probably bad for Kyle Pitts, where if you look at the passing volume for Justin Fields and what you've had, has pretty much been the worst passing offense the NFL has seen over the past decade. So I think if you are rooting for Pitts, rooting for London, you want one of those traditional pocket passing options. A dream would be Kirk Cousins, right? I'm not going to sit here and act like, if the Atlanta Falcons get Kirk Cousins and all of a sudden they're a Super Bowl contender, and if they get Justin Fields, they're trash. No, of course that's not the case. But from a fantasy football perspective, that's the kind of guy you want if you're chasing those pass catchers, such as Pitts, such as London. You want the guy that's going to have a lot of passing volume, not necessarily steal all the production for himself on the ground. But Doc79 says, how's the Iron Man trading going? It's going, my man. It is going. So let me see if I have any recent updates. I have the half Iron Man early April. I have no idea when it is. It's probably in about a month. I'm not worried about the bike at all on that because it's completely flat and it's only like 50, 60 miles or something, which I've never biked further than like 40, but I can just do it. That's not an issue. I'm worried about the swim because it's in the ocean and I'm just terrified of drowning in the ocean regardless. But for the main Ironman in June, I still need to learn how to bike up and down mountains. I need to learn how to not be scared when I'm going down a massive hill. So I went, and for the first time in a while, I took the bike off the trainer and I actually biked earlier today up and down up and down the hills in Austin. It's just scary going down a hill. And I'm going 30 miles an hour and there's a stop sign at the bottom of it. I have to stop or I can get sideswiped by a car. So in the short term, for the half Ironman, I'm scared of the swim. For the full Ironman in June, I am scared of the bike. Okay. Now let's move this over. So you have a run on running backs here. I want to see where Trey Benson went. So Trey Benson went pick 110 in comparison to Jonathan Brooks, 127. So from a dynasty fantasy football perspective, obviously it's a very strong argument to just stick with the guy that would be a running back one if he was fully healthy, to stick with Jonathan Brooks, Hook 'em Lawrence. A redraft / underdog best ball, you have to take Trey Benson as RB1 based on what he just did at the NFL Combine. And in terms of Jonathan Brooks versus Trey Benson in Dynasty, it's something I don't have a good answer for. I put Trey Benson running back 1, Jonathan Brooks running back 2. But we're really back-to-back in the same tier for us. I mean, we actually have our Dynasty rankings coming out tomorrow on the Dynasty channel. And that can be something that we flip back and forth on very often. But Brandon Cooks off the board 139. Okay. So at quarterback right now, we have Mahomes, Joe Burrow. Running back, we have CMC, Saquon Barkley. Wide receiver, we have Olave, Addison, Brian Thomas Jr., Hollywood Brown, Mike Williams. Tight end, we have David Njoku as well as Kyle Pitts. Probably be a team I draft 3 tight ends anyway. If it was a Best Ball Mania draft where you only had 18 rounds, I would stop after taking David Njoku and Kyle Pitts. I'd only take 2. But because this is a round where you have 20 drafts, I feel fine to take the 3rd. Cousins goes 142. We're probably not planning on taking another quarterback unless we get like some crazy value, so I'm fine with it. You have Condre Miller off the board 143. I want to be on record. Quentin Johnston's probably a very bad wide receiver. Quentin Johnston is most likely a bust. But I don't want to sit here and act like Michael Wilson's guaranteed to be some stud. We also have the correlation where we took Mike Williams, so we can be making a concentrated bet saying, okay, maybe with this team, we are just saying that this is someone who, I mean, this is a team where the Los Angeles Chargers don't draft a wide receiver at 5. They don't draft Bowers. They go into the season and they maybe trade back or they take Joe Altz. They go into the season with Keenan, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston. Keenan gets hurt. And all of a sudden, both Mike Williams and Quentin Johnston absolutely crush as 11th and 12th round draft picks. Now, we're telling a story there, a story that is unlikely to happen, but you have to find an unlikely path if you want to turn $10 into $200,000. So we're going to do it. But In says, if you can stream for 120 days in a row, you can crush the Iron Man. First off, my man, we went like 220 days in a row last year. Put some respect on my name. Second thing, I don't know if that's true, but we are going to try my best. Doug says, Troy Franklin looked horrid at the combine. I know he was ultra productive in college, but please reevaluate his ranking. He has tiny little legs. My man, as someone who is a fellow member of the tiny leg crew, I don't appreciate this. I think that this is rude. This is slanderous. And I think you should put some respect on guys with tiny legs. All right. Now, in the case of Troy Franklin, this is a wide receiver that did weigh less than 180 pounds. I don't have a good answer for this. I know what everybody in the chat thinks. And I will say that I'm coming around to y'all's argument, but I'm stubborn enough to where I'm not willing to throw in the towel immediately. We went through and we did that research for the Dynasty video last week. For the past 15 years, I think we went back 15 years. I'm sure if we go back further, it's all going to be the same regardless. There have been 0 wide receiver ones in fantasy. That's from a points per game perspective, top 12 guys, PPR formats. But there have been 0 wide receiver ones in fantasy that weighed less than 180 pounds at the NFL Combine. Now, Devonta Smith weighed 175, and Devonta Smith has come pretty damn close. And I was drafting Smith anyway. We were ignoring with him just because how good he was at Alabama. He was literally one of the best college wide receivers of all time in that one season. Tank Dell, on the other hand, was not someone I was drafting. And the reason was because he was 165. And we had simply never seen a wide receiver that small, not even be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy, but just be like a top 24 guy in fantasy. But the NFL's changing. You don't need to have as much of a physical prowess if you are an NFL wide receiver now as opposed to back in the day. So I think weight matters less. I think size matters less. But I'm still going to be knocking him. I mean, Xavier Worthy, 165 pounds. I'm still knocking him. Tank Dell's been the only wide receiver ever at that size to ever do anything. But yeah, so I actually did move Troy Franklin down our dynasty rankings. But what are we doing here? I have no idea. We got to queue up anybody so we don't take Audric. I mean, this is a running back who runs a 4.71. We've never seen a running back that slow be a running back one in fantasy. So we'll take Wandale. Wandale was actually one of our most drafted guys. Take him in round 18 last year. That was one of the players I was hiding from y'all. Do we take Elijah Moore as well? And essentially tell a fake story of, oh, okay, well, we have David Njoku. We have Elijah Moore. Maybe with this team, Deshaun Watson coming out. Deshaun Watson bounces back this year somehow. And this works out. But probably not likely. But anyway, running back, we have CMC, Saquon Barkley, Braylon Allen. So we're going with the double anchor RB approach. Wide receiver, we have Olave, Addison, Brian Thomas Jr., Hollywood Brown, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston, Wan'Dale Robinson, Elijah Moore. Quarterback, we went with two elite guys in my mind, Mahomes and Joe Burrow. Right now, neither of them are stacked, but I told you I just got back from the future. You actually have the Cincinnati Bengals selecting Brian Thomas Jr. round 1. Pair up Jamar Chase with another LSU wide receiver. And you actually have Hollywood Brown going into the Kansas City Chiefs in free agency. So we actually have 2 stacks, so just ignore the fact that we don't have any. Tight end, we have David Njoku and Kyle Pitts. All jokes aside, correlation that we have right now is minimal. We have Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston. We have David Njoku, Elijah Moore. But it is what it is. It's what it is. Doug says he is not Devonta. Trust me, I'm not coming out here saying that Troy Franklin is Devonta Smith. And yes, I moved Troy Franklin down our rankings based off his NFL combine. I'm not like crossing him off our board by any means, but I think we had to move him behind Brian Thomas Jr., of course. I mean, he's not even the same tier at this point. And then I think, hey, let me know what y'all think in the live chat, because this is something that I don't know. We threw them all in the same tier as of now, but who do you have wide receiver 1 between Adonai Mitchell, Troy Franklin, Xavier Worthy? Adonai, Franklin, Worthy. Who is wide receiver 1 in your mind between the 3? I have them all back to back to back. Troy Franklin, beautiful metrics. Production profile, great, which is typically what I want from a wide receiver, and I don't care that much about their NFL combine. Adonai Mitchell, horrendous metrics. He's like dead last in this class in yards per route run. But phenomenal combine. Look at this. We have Adonai. It looks like everybody is going to go Adonai Mitchell here. Interesting. I maybe I didn't die. I mean, maybe I didn't knock him hard enough. Maybe I was too slow to move him down. So we're going to go Antonio Gibson. I think we're going to take Miles Sanders as well. Now, I want to be on record. Gibson may find himself in a decent spot. If it was a good NFL draft class or running back, I think he'd be completely toast. Miles Sanders has guaranteed money in Carolina. I want to be on record, very similar to when we take Quentin Johnston. Miles Sanders is probably toast. Miles Sanders is probably very bad. But this is a Panthers team that has needs everywhere. I don't necessarily know if they have the luxury of going through and paying up for a running back in this year's NFL draft. So with that in mind, I think that we can maybe assume that Miles Sanders is kind of, at least has a roster spot safe, which we don't necessarily know that about these other guys. We need a running back. We only had 3 of them coming into this round. So let's go ahead. Let's pull the trigger. Klaus says 80 route running could improve immensely in the NFL. My man, you know I would love to root for our Longhorns. It's something I want to do, but it's just tough. Like, it would be different if Adonai Mitchell was like middle of the road with all his production numbers. Like Brian Thomas Jr., for instance, that's a perfect example, right? Brian Thomas Jr., his yards per route run, his targets per route run, his yards per team past him, they're all about middle of the road. They're all about middle of the class. But we can go ahead and we can say, okay, well, he played alongside Malik Neighbors, presumably top 10 NFL draft pick. He checks every single box of the NFL Combine. At the same time, he declares as a true junior. We really like to see that. So maybe we can make an argument. Yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. is fine. Brian Thomas Jr., ignore the fact that he's not at the very top of the class with his production. Adonai Mitchell, I'd love to make the same argument. I'd love to come out here and say, okay, he had to play alongside Xavier Worthy. He had to play alongside Jatavion Sanders. I mean, Jonathan Brooks is a fine receiving option early in the year. He had competition. And that's why he's middle of the road in this class with his production numbers. I would like to do the same thing as Brian Thomas. But the difference is Adonai Mitchell's not middle of the road with those production numbers. He's at the very, 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 very bottom of the class. It's horrible. I'm not giving up on him, but I'm not going to... He's on my draft board, but he's probably lower than where most people have him, if we're going to be honest. He's on my draft board, but he's probably lower than where most others have him. Okay. So let me see if the tight end that I've been drafting in the later rounds will still be here. Yes, I'm mixing in one of these tight ends that's not currently being drafted. So we'll probably take them in round 20, but I'm probably going to hide them from y'all if we're going to be honest. Noah Fant goes to 14. So we have 3 picks left. Any starting quarterbacks? No. So we're only going to go 2 quarterbacks, which we're completely fine with. We're probably going to go A.J. Dillon. Jalen, how many rookies? Yeah, this will be our 3rd rookie. So let's go ahead and let's pull the trigger on these 2 guys. I mean, Dillon looked like complete toast, looked like buns last year. But I don't know if we can hype up Chris Rodriguez. So let's go ahead, make those 2 calls, and we will be taking a tight end in the last round here, ladies and gentlemen. But this is the team. Usually I'm very embarrassed by the time we get to the end of this, but I feel like we don't need to be too embarrassed here. A fine roster. Don't act like it's the best team in the world. A great thing would be Brian Thomas Jr. going to KC, going to Cincy, Jalen McMillan going to one of these teams. Getting some kind of correlation in here, but yeah, I'm going to hide my last tight end from y'all. If you are in this draft room with us, you'll probably see it. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. Really do appreciate you hanging out with me as always. And of course, somehow already you are not on Underdog. I mean, we're going to be drafting here literally all off season. Promo code FLOCK, link in the live chat, description, comment section, 100% deposit match, our Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings, and get in some fun best ball drafts. But you probably already know all that. Really do appreciate y'all. And I will either see you with the Dynasty video tomorrow, or I will see you with the next live stream on this channel. And probably, maybe we do it every Sunday. Minimum in a week, maybe sooner.